Time doesn't erase murder. It just hides it better. They said the case was closed. They said no one was watching. But someone always is. This is Santana True Crime.
Welcome to Santana True Crime. Tonight, we're revisiting one of the most baffling unsolved mysteries in American history, the disappearance of the Yuba County Five. On February 24th, 1978, 5 young men left a college basketball game in Chico, California. Instead of driving home, they somehow ended up deep in the Sierra Nevada mountains where their car was found abandoned. Nearly 50 years later, the case continues to spark debate, new theories, and more questions than answers. I'm honored to be joined by 4 guests today that have been researching the case. Tony Wright is the author of Things Aren't Right. Drew Beeson, author of Out of Bounds. And we've got Eduardo.
Colelia.
Go ahead, Eduardo.
Eduardo Colelia is my name. Thanks for having
Thank
me.
you. Eduardo has been running a Reddit group for quite some time. I believe you've got 1,200 members, and you've really been able to go through these details of the case as well as dispel some rumors. So thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me. Well, you know, this case has intrigued me for 6 years now, and it's kind of a run, you know. The case hits home for so many reasons. First and foremost, I love mysteries. I'm not a true crime buff, but I do love mysteries of any kind. And unfortunately, I'm no stranger to this kind of situations, to the missing persons or forcibly disappeared persons. This has happened in my family quite often. And to me, myself personally. So I kind of know what the families go through. I have seen my family destroyed into pieces for not knowing what happened to your loved ones, like the Matthias family does to this day. And it's such a harsh thing. It's very cruel. And there is something in this history too that captivated me, you know, the approach that the family had with the boys' disabilities, let's call it this way.
Okay.
I found it very positive that the families always push the boys, you know, like go into the world, join the best you can, don't let your disabilities define you and everything else. And then this happened to them, and it's very cruel. And technically, I will say that this case is very unique from a criminalistic point of view. It's a mystery that's as big as I have never, ever seen in other cases. And I know them all, like we all do, you know. But this case, the more you dig, the more questions you have, not more answers. And that is something very hard to find in any other case. In a regular type of case, you dig and you find this little answer and that little answers that solve this little mystery, and at least you have a box of facts that you can agree upon. We don't have this in the Yuba County case, and
Right.
that defies the whole idea of what we humans consider true, you know, which is a
Right.
theme that not obsesses me, but kind of.
To be joined by.
Well, and I was actually talking with Drew about this before we started, that what I found so interesting about this case is that this is something that throughout time, no matter how many times we do a show, there's always comments, there's more questions, there's people bringing different perspectives, which is something that you bring, Eduardo, to this as someone that's dealt with this violence before and dealt with missing persons from a family point of view. Tony,
Yeah.
I know that you and Drew have spent an enormous amount of time researching this as well. I wanted to start out this show by looking at this from a victimology standpoint. And can you both kind of talk about how did you see I'm going to say boys, but these are young men. But can you give us your perspective on them, their abilities, their decision making? Because some of those are kind of the basic fundamental questions that are asked.
Okay, Tony.
Yeah, for the five, I'll start with Ted, and he was oldest.
Tony, I can't hear you. Can you?
You're cutting out a little.
Is my microphone cutting out?
Okay.
You're better now.
You sound better now. Sorry, we're doing this live, so we're going to have these issues. We've got a lot of people in the chats, including Seth. We were just on your podcast. Thanks for joining us. So, Tony, try that again. Can you give us your perspective of the five boys and kind of what were their abilities, and especially in connection to them being able to travel to this game and back safely?
Okay, so the driver was Jack Madruga. He was 30 years old. He had a very responsible background as far as being a driver and sort of being the guy that would not only drive the five, but his nieces and nephews around town. And he had experience driving to places like Chico and to Sacramento. So, Jack was a very responsible young man, very withdrawn, probably, a very misunderstood kind of person. His, nieces and nephews said he was very smart, very kind, very gentle, loving guy. He was probably just socially awkward. I mean, could he have been on the autism spectrum? It's possible. We just don't know enough to diagnose Jack. But for people like Ted Weir, his family believes that he was very athletic, very kind, very jovial, loved sports, just enjoyed going places and being socially active. He liked bowling and mini golf and playing basketball and just hanging out with his friends. And Jackie Hewitt was a close friend of his, about 24 years old. And Jackie was very kind, very, loving brother. Bill Sterling, quiet guy, but loved the bowl. And Gary, very athletic, loved rock and roll. Great brother, great family member. And so with all these guys, I mean, they were nice guys. They enjoyed spending time together. They never had any problems with each other personally that I knew of, or, never was brought up to me. So here you have five guys, no history of getting lost. And I will always credit Drew with making that point that, that's one of the first things I learned from Drew is these guys never had a history of getting lost. So, and here they are going on a trip together. And I think we still talk about it. We still hear about it today where people comment on the men's disabilities and ask what they were doing out and, talk to those families. And they'll say, we never had an issue with those guys traveling.
Yeah. And so, Drew, to kind of frame the question in another way, I've had some comments in the past saying, well, and we're going to jump ahead briefly, but just to phrase the question, that maybe they made a pit stop when they were coming back to like buy marijuana or something of that sort. Is that the type of, because from my understanding, these guys seem more low key, like they seem more focused on going to the basketball game and really looking forward to playing in a game the next day. Is there any kind of mischievous side of this five that you've been able to find?
None at all. Of course, Scary Matthias was the outlier. He was not like the other four. He had some troubles in his past, violence and stuff like that. He was schizophrenic, but he was, by all accounts, stable on his medications. Once they finally got the right combo of that stuff, I mean, it's stuff for, heavy medication that you have to get on the right cycle of, and they have to play with that. And they finally had gotten the right combination for Gary. I think about 2 years going into his disappearance, they had him pretty leveled out on his medicine, but he had lots of barroom fights. He got thrown out of the military because his schizophrenia was so bad. So he got a medical discharge from the Army. But otherwise, he had been pretty stable other than, some run-ins with the law. They weren't really great, but he was absolutely the outlier and kind of the protector of the other four in a lot of ways. And unfortunately, the other four guys were a little afraid of him. It's just a fact. but they wouldn't deny him if he wanted to go with them to, the basketball game in Chico like they did. And of course, he was part of the team, the Gateway Gators, that was going to play in the Special Olympics tournament that next day. If anything, I found out, they all lived at home. All five still lived at home with their parents. And I could tell you that the four of them, excluding Gary Mathias, did not do drugs that I ever heard of whatsoever. The one thing I learned about the boys a little later on after being into this case is they were really, really, really into girls. So don't go thinking that they were not. I mean, I think some of them did have girlfriends and such, but they were far more into girls than I ever gave them credit for, is something I learned along the way, which was kind of neat. But, they were normal, boys. I mean, they were cognitively maybe not up to par with the others. It's something today we maybe call on the spectrum. I don't know if any of them were formally diagnosed, except for maybe Bill Sterling, and Tony know more about that. But nothing about going to smoke marijuana. That whole story comes from Gary Mathias. Had some friends in Forbstown that was not even near where they found the car at Rogers Cow Camp up in the Plumas. So that was just somebody's theory at the time, based on a false sighting that we believe was false at a convenience store, not Bears Market in Chico. We know they went there. This is another convenience store where a lady had claimed that Jackie Hewitt came in, I think with Ted, and were buying a lot of food and stuff like that. But that was right after the reward came out, and nobody, even the families, believe that's a real sighting, because the way it was talked about and the way it played out, and they were in a red truck or something, which kind of gets tied in later to all Joe Schoen's garbage. Basically, that guy could never keep his story straight. But they said that they would never be without Doc's 1969 Mercury Montego, something that they would, if anybody saw them, they would be with that car, and they weren't that particular sighting. So that's where the whole marijuana thing comes in, I think, with that story of Gary Mathias having some friends in Forbstown, which he had not seen in an entire year. And they actually interviewed those guys and said, no, we didn't see Gary. So the marijuana thing holds no weight at all. And I don't think they'd be making a pit stop, because that was a pretty short ride back from Chico to go back to Yuba County. They would have done that at Bears Market if they needed to go to the bathroom. They had just bought their snacks for the ride home, as we all know. I think something, and I think Tony and even Eduardo will agree with me, that something interfered with them on that ride home after leaving Bears Market. It probably did not happen in the parking lot of Bears Market, but it could have been spotted at the basketball game, because if you saw them as a group, you would say something's wrong with them, and you wouldn't realize to Gary Mathias it was the outlier, because he wore really thick Coke bottle glasses most of the time. He had started wearing contact lenses, but that particular night of the game, he was wearing his Coke bottle glasses, and I think that came from a vision problem from falling out of the car when he was a young boy. But if you saw all five of them out in public, they would look like an easy target for somebody that was looking for, an easy robbery. They were in a nice car, that Montego. So I think us guys that are really into this case think something interfered with them on that drive home.
Well, before we get to that, Eduardo, you had a very good point that there's very few known facts about this case. And one of them is that we know that they got to the basketball game, and that if you want to go into this, you can, but they were actually spotted by some people that have come forward and said that they did witness them at the game, correct?
As far as we know, we have Mr. Bill Lee, who was the sports editor for the local newspaper in Chico Enterprise, it was called, who went on to the police and voluntarily said that he did spot the boys, and he spotted them differentially because they were like a little aside from the main supporting group for UC Davis in Chico campus. And in my mind, that's the only voice that we have saying the boys were at the game. But we do have Miss Mary Davis, the Bears Market clerk, who says that she distinctly remembers seeing the five boys at 12 p.m.-ish that very same night. She was about to close, and she was kind of annoyed by this because, I don't know, maybe the boys were indecisive or on what snacks buying or whatever. And that's the only person we trust seeing the boys sound and safe. And that's pretty much all of we know.
Let me ask you
Then,
something because this is something that I think needs to be pointed out. When they are seen at the basketball game and they are seen at the market after the basketball game, no one is saying that they're acting erratic, right?
no,
They
No
were
one's
happy.
in. So being in law enforcement, I've dealt with people that are, schizophrenic and off their meds, and you can tell. I mean, they are when someone's acting erratic, when they're seeing things, when they become violent. These are our recognizable behaviors, and we don't have. Correct me if I'm wrong, but there's no report of someone from the basketball game. Like they didn't get kicked out of the basketball game, right? They stayed the entire time. And the clerk at the market, it seems like what you're saying, Eduardo, is that she was more annoyed about the timing that they came in,
yeah.
but she wasn't annoyed because of their behavior, right?
No, no, she didn't feel intimidated or in any way. Nothing. They were just five regular men buying some snacks for the trip home, and no disrespect to her either. No, nothing. Funny thing is, we have no witnesses from that night, even stating that the boys were neurodivergent, as we say today, and that's quite astonishing because they were five regular people. The game was scarcely attended, a quarter card, I believe it was, a quarter entry. And this is why Bill Lee recognized them boys. And what we know from Mary Davis, just five regular customers buying these pies, a quarter gallon of milk, a marathon bar, that I always remember the marathon bar, and that's it. They went home.
And
When
another point I wanted to point out that you've just pointed out indirectly is that they're not buying beer. They're
No,
not buying things that would impair their judgment. They're buying
no,
basically like snacks and milk, right?
and
no, no alcohol.
something in this field, something that I oftenly see quite overlooked is the fact that Friday, February the 24th, it was not just another night for the boys. It was the big games eve. The boys were prepared for months for Saturday, the 25th game at Rockville, Sacramento, the Special Olympics regional final that the winner will travel to LA and spend a week there, maybe go to Disney World, maybe meet Sally Struthers, an actress from back in the day,
Yeah.
who the boys loved, by the way, because they were into girls, as you say.
Yes.
And
They were.
yeah, the boys talk about this game for months. Every single family has confirmed this fact. They were like, we say here, no, like porca miseria with the game already, and the game. So this is a pretty strong red flag that I see in this case, and it's quite overlooked. It is not just a regular other night when you can divert from your way. Let's try something different. Let's do this. No, the boys were heading home to their beds to have the rest and attend the game on Saturday the best they could, which they never did.
All right, so Tony, I wanted to talk with you next about. So we know that they left that market on their own free will. There's no reports of anyone having any type of confrontation with them. And then the next sighting we have is them up in the Plumas. Can you talk about this route between the convenience store, Bears Market, and where they ended up? And I want to focus on that this is not something that you would easily be able to just make a bad turn and you don't know where you are. I know we talked about earlier in the shows, and I actually played a video of this drive involved crossing a bridge in a waterway, correct? Can you give us some detail and context on that?
Sure. If you're leaving Chico, you're going to leave via California Highway 99. And then there's a point outside of Chico. There's like this little connecting portion. I think it's called 147. And 147 then splits into two. It goes back to the two highways that will run north to Chico. So 99 from Yuba City and 70 from Marysville. Now, I've talked to Drew and some other people about what would be the most logical highway for Jack Madruga to take. And it's up in the air. People have said that he could have gone 70 back to Marysville. He could have taken 99 back to Yuba City. But the thing is, with both highways, at a point, once you get towards Oroville, California, you can exit the highway and turn onto the once you're on 99 or 70, you can turn onto the Oroville Quincy Highway from both highways near Oroville. So the Oroville Quincy Highway will run through Oroville, and then it will loop up into the Plumas National Forest. And once you get into the Plumas National Forest, your first big, I guess you would say, landmark would be Lake Oroville, that has a natural earthen dam next to it. And there's a big bridge called the Bidwell Bar Bridge. And the guys would have left, Chico after 10 p.m. So it's definitely dark outside. I don't know how much moonlight would play into anything, but you really don't have much as far as highway lights in that area going into the Plumas. So even if they're crossing the Bidwell Bar Bridge, I think that's something where this isn't on the way home. Yeah, you're not taking a big bridge home. And as you go up into the Plumas, you're on winding roads, so you're not going to go as fast on a winding road. Plus, you're driving up into about 3,000, 4,000 feet, and then you do cross another kind of big overpass type bridge at a point in the Plumas. So they have all of these, I guess you would not want to say warning sign, but these landmarks and these roads that just say this is not the way home. And it's different terrain. Like I said, winding roads, the highways are straight on 90 and 70, flat fields, and there's no reason for them to be in this type of terrain because you do see the foothills of the Sierra Nevada, and it's very clear. And then once you get up to a certain point, at that time, the roads become unpaved, which are something that Jack Madruga didn't want to drive on, and you're getting close to the snow line. And again, this is not a quick drive. They're probably taking 45 minutes to an hour, and if it's that long and they're not getting anywhere closer to home and there's no landmarks, there should have been enough indication like, hey, turn around, let's go home. And there are cutouts in the Oroville Quincy Highway. I don't know if it was like that in the 70s, but when I've had the chance to drive it twice, there are these cutouts in the road where you can definitely just do a U-turn and just go back. Yeah. And there's also people who live up that way. So if you're not too sure where you are, I don't think they would have been too
shy
afraid
about
to
asking.
Yeah, just like knock on the door and ask for help. And they would have passed Mountain House. Yeah, and they would have.
Absolutely. Mountain House was right on the road. I mean, remember those pictures of Mountain House? It's literally on the highway. It's no longer there, as I understand. Maybe the forest fire got it, but Mountain House was literally on the highway. You could not miss it.
Yeah, so if they keep driving that way, they're going to be hitting the snow line on an unpaved road, and this is just everything out of it's not normal for them. Like, what are they doing up there? So again, this is a long drive, and this just isn't one wrong turn. This is a long drive through Oroville up into the Plumas. So something was definitely going on that night, and they just kept going that way for whatever reason.
Well, this brings me to my question for you, Drew. The whatever reason part of this, do you believe they made an extra stop between Bears Market and where their car eventually came to rest in the Plumas? Or do you think that was a straight shot and something happened along that drive?
Something happened along the drive. I'm confident. They had plenty of gas. They had their snacks. They went to the bathroom. It was a straight shot. They had been to Chico before. These guys have gone on trips before. We know the family members. Nobody was worried about it. They weren't wearing cold weather clothes because they weren't planning on getting up into any elevations. There was no ulterior plan. This, I don't, a lot of people try to make the argument, well, Gary Mathias was, they were scared of him. That's true. And he did have a certain amount of control over the other four, but these are four very athletic, big guys. That really hit me when I met Tony here in Houston with Dallas Weir, Ted Weir's nephew, and he's big like the rest of the Weir men. Just big guys. I mean, these are big guys. Ted was a big man. And even Jackie Hewitt, there's pictures of him where, these guys played sports all the time, mostly basketball, but they did a lot of athletic things, and they were in really good physical shape. I think the 4-against-1 would have shut Gary Mathias down if he started acting up on the way home. That's why as we know, he hasn't acted up in 2 years at minimum. So somebody interfered with him on the way home. They had everything they needed. There was no need to make another stop. It wasn't that far. They had made this trip before. I think somebody at the basketball game, more likely than maybe the parking lot of Bears, which is a possibility, noticed them as a group and saw some kind of a prey, like, let's rob them, let's do something. And they got interfered with and probably forced off the road. Because what we do know about the boys is they were very helpful. If they saw somebody in distress, like a female on the side of the road, like, hey, my tire's flat, it could have been a ruse to get them to pull over to help them, they would have absolutely pulled over for a female in distress. We know that from the family members, that these guys love to help people. So I'm a firm belief that someone interfered with them on the way home, and that's how they wound up in the Plumas. They had, this wasn't a wrong turn, like Tony said. They were interfered with on that drive home.
Tony, you've talked about before, and Eduardo, you can chime in on your thoughts on this. I'll ask you both the same question. Tony, I believe one of your theories is that they may have stopped in Orville, right?
Yeah, I think it's possible they stopped in Orville for any reason. I've thrown out ideas like, maybe someone had to use the bathroom. Maybe someone wanted, because some of the guys smoked, so maybe they wanted cigarettes and maybe they ran out. Maybe they wanted to call home, maybe if there was a payphone. But another thing, as we've talked about, I know, the group chat we kind of got going on for Yuba County is we found a Taco Bell in Oroville, and Jack Madruga was a big fan of Taco Bell, and it was in operation in 1978. Now, we don't know the hours, but if it's open past 10 o'clock, maybe he wanted to stop there, because they do find a Taco Bell bag in the car. So,
yeah.
When did he eat Taco Bell? Did he eat earlier in the day? Did he eat that night? I mean, we don't have a receipt to show. Yeah, we don't have a receipt to show when he did. But if they do exit into Orville, there's definitely a reason. And it's not like you just sort of like drift off the highway, like, oh, I took a wrong turn. I mean, you have to make an effort to exit the highway. And, if you're on 99, you turn left at a place called Thermalito. And then if you're on 70, you turn left. You're just kind of right out in this outside of Oroville. So all you have to do is exit these highways, and there's no reason to leave. So whatever happens in Oroville, I'm just not sure.
And Chico's a lot larger than Oroville. Chico's like what, 5 or 6 times bigger than Oroville. If there was a Taco Bell, it would have been in Chico, not Oroville. It's such a bigger town. I mean, you think anything you wanted would have been there, and they already had food.
Yeah.
Can y'all give us some perspective too? And I've had this asked before in the comments. How is the crime in Chico and in Orville? Is this someplace that they would be safe, or is this someplace that people would be preying upon them?
There's a case. There's a guy named, I'll mention him, Kenny Davenport Slater. He's a big supporter of ours. And there was a guy in Chico who worked with his wife on abducting women and keeping them prisoner in the house. And there was something about this recently where he was abducting women, and I can't remember that. But yeah, in Northern California, there was crime. Chico, Oroville, Yuba City, Marysville, crime was an issue.
Violent.
Yeah. And, drugs had entered some communities and, turned the communities on their head. I have heard that Oroville is a tough community. I mean, there's some tough locals there. And Chico, it's a college town, but, it had its crime as well. I mean, you always look at the West Coast, especially places like California. I mean, you go from, the redwoods down to San Diego, there's going to be crime no matter where you go. It's just the way it is in California. So I couldn't tell you the exact statistics, but I do know like Chico and Oroville and Yuba City and Marysville and down even to Sacramento had all kinds of crime. I mean, one thing that just came up recently in Sacramento was the Dorothea Puente house, the lady that took in transient men and stole their, I guess you would say like social security checks, because she ran like a halfway house or something like that, or housing for transient men. And she killed them and buried them in her yard, but she kept cashing their checks because that's where they said she was living. And I mean, there's a lot of crazy stuff going on in Sacramento at this time too. So
Weird time.
yeah, the 70s were different, especially in California. And even go out to
the
New York City.
Chowchilla incident where those kids were kidnapped in the bus. That was, kidnapped for ransom.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
That wasn't far away, and I think that was 76 or 7. So we're talking not even 2 years apart, and maybe an hour away from Yuba City.
And the Golden State
so you had all
Killer.
that weird stuff. Yeah, luckily those kids survived because I think the bus driver with one of the students climbed up out of the storage crate they had buried him in at a rock quarry that was owned by one of the kidnappers' parents or something. Yeah. And they were going to hold all those kids for ransom money and got caught. But that's the weird stuff that was going on in California.
And at the same time, I've read through some, I'm sorry, I remember reading through some newspaper articles at the time. They were reporting on the Golden State Killer at the same time as the Yuba City case. So you've got that going on as well.
Lots of crimes, weird stuff.
Son of Sam case is going on in New York. There's a lot of other cases. It's just New York. 70s were different, man. The 70s were different.
Late 60s and 70s. Yeah.
So we've got an abundance of crime that are going on, and you've got 5 people that may not be as aware of their surroundings as. I mean, I say that, but at the same time, a bunch of 20-year-olds would be in the same thing. I think about the stupid things that college kids do all the time. I don't know if they would be so aware either that that someone may have been preying on them. But I do think that this may have been an opportunity that someone took as far as seeing them either at the game, and maybe they did stop at that Taco Bell and Chico, or
they stuck out as a group, no doubt.
So, Eduardo, I know that eventually we do have supposedly one witness that comes forward. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that? I'm talking about in reference to Joseph.
Yeah, precisely me, who in our group, I'm not a big fan of Joe Jones being the main perpetrator of this criminal enterprise for so many reasons. Maybe you gentlemen want to go through. Let's recap some facts about what we know about Joe Jones. Fact number 1, Joe Jones was there. There ain't no question about it, because if
the car was there.
Yeah, if we could have some reasonable doubt about Jones being up there, we could say, due to his big mouth, maybe he wasn't even there. But we know a fact
the car gave him away.
Yeah, he was there because the car is spotted by 6 different groups of people who don't know each other. They have no relationship whatsoever between them. So the car was there. Fact number 2, Joe Jones is seen leaving the mountain house at 6 p.m.-ish and driving up, not down
the wrong way.
Yeah, not down to Berry Creek, where he lived, but deep into the Plumas forest, right? 6 p.m.-ish. He is not seen for 12 hours when he is seen again the day after, 6 a.m.-ish, kind of, walking, not driving, down to the mountain house again, where he is seen and heard saying all these things that I should have done this 2 years ago, asking for an aspirin, a glass of water, and not mentioning once about any cardiac situation of any kind.
Didn't say a word.
So, fact number 2. And fact number 3, and most important of all, Joe Jones lied through his teeth in this whole situation. Why am I so bold to say that a man lied? Well, because when you when you tell six different versions of the same chain of events, you are not telling the truth at
Right.
least 5 times. Not to
Right.
say six.
Yes.
There ain't no Schrodinger cats in the physical world. Things happen in a sequence. So if you give six different versions, I was chased up there. I saw 2 people. I saw 12 people, the woman and the baby.
Baby.
I saw a red pickup truck. On second thought, I didn't see no pickup truck. On a third thought, I saw a pickup truck. So which is it? So he lied. My point is, with all these facts, first, Joe Jones, if acting alone, has this proud of an alibi because if he was there as he was for 12 hours up in the mountain, how on earth could he manage to drive down, not to be seen by the people in the mountain house, drive to
back.
Chico, target the boys, make a convoy of cars of any kind back there, up to the boats again? I don't see it. Point number 2. I think it was in this very show that I heard someone said that Joe Jones ain't the planner, which is absolutely true. Joe Jones is not a criminal mastermind designed
No.
to make
Agreed.
complicated and
Agreed.
big criminal enterprises. Nah, he's not. As a matter of fact, Joe Jones,
True.
Joseph Harold Jones, is the most investigated person in this case. I mean, like, let's say 20%, Tony, of the case file we have is on Jones. They looked through his underwear. They found nothing related to this. He has a pretty strong sheet. Burbank, Irvine, different cities in California, but nothing like this. And third, there is, till today, no known connection between Jones and the boys. Not by neighborhood, not by institutions. Let's remember that Jones's little daughter also attended institutions as Gateway, but not Gateway.
There.
So no connection. He has no relationship with none of the 10 parents of the 5 families. So I don't know. But then again, he was there. So
He was there.
I will mention to you, gentlemen, a fourth point against Jones that I have, and this is where I start to show my cards. I see either no connection between Joe Jones and the trailers, which is the part of the story that I'm most focused on. We don't know if Jones knew about the trailers, or even know about its existence. And the trailers scene is the most important scene in this case, the one from which we extract the most information. And we cannot link shows, not with the boys, not with Chico, not with the trailers. So I don't know. The thing that we don't know is that we do know is he was there and he lied for whatever reason.
Yeah, and I want to kind of break this down a little bit because I think everyone agrees, or you have to really, because he told, as you were saying, Eduardo, a multitude of stories. But the first part that maybe Drew, you and Tony can comment on is, why do you think he drove up there to begin with? I know that he
Good
had
question.
some drinks beforehand, and that was he did one of the most impossible things that someone can do, and that is that you go to a bar by yourself and you have one beer. I think he said he had one beer, right?
Like he's never been consistent. Well, he said he had was it I think it was with the families. He said he had a beer, and he told the cops he had 3 beers.
Okay.
So he's he's had at least 10 beers. You told me
Right.
this, Cameron. Like if a guy says he's had one beer, he's had 10.
You tack a zero. Yeah.
He liked to drink.
Well, and Drew, why do you think he was just drunk and drove in the wrong direction, or like why? And that's one of the questions I have. It's like why
he could
did
have
go up there.
He could have just done it out of drunkenness. He was known to get his car stuck in the snow up there all the time. I mean, people would come and help him out of the snow, and he wouldn't even thank them. That was kind of his deal. He was the town BSer. If he got caught on a lie, like he said he was in the military fighting in Vietnam or something, and he would somebody'd say, nah, I was in the military. I don't remember you being over there. He just doubled down on the lies. But what you got to do with Joe Shones is don't focus so much on Joe Shones. Focus on his wife's story. Then you start to get somewhere. Forget everything Joe Shones says and focus on what his wife said that's in the police files. Then you're going to start really wondering why his wife did what she did. So Joe was up there, as Eduardo said, because the VW Bug was up there that belonged to his wife, Rosinda, who went by Cindy. Cindy comes up the next day, and Joe's whole story was that he had a heart attack up there, and then the car runs out of gas, and then he has the sighting of the boys, and he thinks he saw a woman with a baby, this whole stuff that goes on and lives forever because he's the only witness here. Unfortunately, I don't remember how Tony worded it in this book, but it's perfectly written the way Tony said it in the book about Joe. It's like he's the greatest witness in the world, but it's the worst luck ever, or whatever. However you wrote that, Tony, it's perfect. You have to focus on what his wife did, because Joe is the town BSer. Joe is no mastermind, like we said, but his wife's a little bit of a different animal. That's what you have to remember here. His wife's a little more cunning. What she did by Joe's story, and Tony brought up this brilliant point. After Joe has this sighting, his car runs out of gas, so there's no longer heat. So we won't get into the fact that that's an air-cooled engine in a VW. That's another story for another show. But Joe says he walks back to Mountain House. I think that's about 5.5 miles. And he's going back downhill, but it's extremely cold up there. And Tony made the great, just from us talking about this case, made the great point is, how does Joseph Jones not get hypothermia? By his own account, walks back to the Mountain House, and there's switchbacks. In one account, he says that he walked by the Montego and he got in the car. That account was in the Oroville newspaper, where it's literally written at the time that he got in the boy's car. In another account, he looked in the car and didn't see anything, and he kept walking. So there's another, constantly changing story from Joe. But he claims he walked for I think it took him 5 hours or so to make it all the way back to Mountain House early in the morning, where he never mentions that he had this mild heart attack. But how does he said that he had to stop every 150 feet and rest because he had this heart attack. And Tony made the brilliant observation of, how does this guy lay down in this wet cold up there in the Plumas and not get hypothermia? That's insane to me. And that was a great point by Tony. But focusing more on his wife. His wife it came up from Sacramento. Joe goes to the Mountain House, doesn't mention the fact that he had this mild heart attack, like Eduardo mentioned. And he gets a couple to take him back to Berry Creek, as they pronounced up there. We call it Creek in Texas, but up there it's Creek. He lives in Berry Creek. So his wife comes and, Joe gets a ride home from the Mountain House. And at some point, his wife comes home from Sacramento, and he tells his wife, had a mild heart attack. And, your car's way up there near Rogers Cow Camp, way up in the Plumas. So her first order of business, and this is true, this is fact, is for the police files. She does not take her husband to the hospital. She wants to go get her car. That's a fact. Her first order of business is to go get that VW Bug, not take hubby to the local ER. Think about that. That's crazy, right? So she goes to the Mountain House on that Saturday. Joe's still at home going, heart attack. And she goes to the Mountain House and tells them, I'm going up the mountain to get my car, and she's at a place that has all the supplies you would need. She does not bring extra gas. She does not bring jumper cables. She makes it up to her car with somebody else. I think a friend or something. I know she did a friend on Sunday. Maybe she took the daughter. Tony would know. He remembers all these facts, which are important. So she makes her way up to her car, and she tries to, what in her own words in the police files, tries to pop the clutch in her VW Bug. She can't start it. Well, duh, you didn't bring jumper cables or gasoline. Didn't Joe tell you he ran out of gas? So she goes up there without provisions to make sure she could bring the car back down the mountain. Interesting, isn't it? She needed to get to that car to get something out of it, in my opinion. Because this is on the police files. This isn't speculation. That's there.
She goes twice, actually.
She goes
Saturday
back the
and
next
Sunday.
day and gets the car. She goes back on Sunday with somebody else and gets the car. Makes it a point to go back to Mountain House and say, hey, I got it. But why does she go all the way up there on Saturday without jumper cables or gasoline is beyond me. And why does she go get that car before she takes her hubby to the hospital for the heart attack? These are facts. And that really makes you wonder why those two things happened that are clear as day in writing in the police files. And going back to Tony, what he said about Joe, he's literally resting every way on the way back. And there's switchbacks on that road back down from Rogers Cow Camp where the car was found. And he takes at least 4.5, 5 hours to make this walk in the freezing cold weather back to the Mountain House. I mean, sure, the temperature is getting a little warmer as he's going down in elevation, but how does he not get hypothermia when he's out in that kind of cold, probably not dressed for it, and he's laying down to take these rest breaks in the wet, cold snow and doesn't even have a sign of hypothermia? That was a great point by Tony. And then you weigh that with what his wife did, not taking him to the hospital, going up to that car without means to get it on a Saturday, comes back on Sunday more casually, and then is successful in getting her car back down the mountain. I think that's the crux of this case, and I'll probably die on that hill.
Tony, do you want to give us your thoughts on that? And to include, do you think, because every time I hear about these long walks through the snow, I think about Brandon Swanson. I don't know if y'all are familiar with that case, where kind of is the same thing, where he wrecks his car, he sees a light in the distance, he starts walking through a field, he's actually on the phone with his dad, and he yells, oh shit, and then the phone goes dead. And the initial investigation was focused around the car, which was wrong because they now believe that he made it between 8 to 12 miles, and he eventually died of hypothermia. And that was someone that was young and in fairly good shape.
Right.
Joseph does not. Right.
No,
And-
no.
Yeah. And that's not in the mountains either. I mean,
No, that's in Minnesota.
So, I mean, Tony, can you give us some of your thoughts on this? Do you think he actually made that hike alone? And why can you comment on Drew's thought about his wife's involvement or potential involvement?
Yeah, so I've talked with Drew and Eduardo for years about the case, and we have a lot of discussions about Shones and his wife. So we do know Shones is up there. We do know that Shones had the heart attack. He's got the car, the VW, and then he does make the walk. He says it's like I want to say maybe 5 to 8 mile walk back to Mountain House, and the walk, I do believe it's like 5 hours ish. So, and he says this in the newspapers that he's walking and he falls down and the ground is wet. So like Drew said, I've talked with him. If you fall into, a wet ground and you get back up and your clothes are wet and you're walking for like 5 hours. Yeah. Cause the temperature up there was it was just 20. I mean, it was just 29. I sound like a Midwesterner. It was 29 degrees, but still, that's cold. You're below freezing. So Joe is walking and stopping and walking and stopping. Sometimes he would say he'd walk and stop and fall and get up off the ground and make it. It's like some big Rocky moment or
very heroic.
Yeah,
Good analogy.
This guy is just barely making it. So he does get to Mountain House. He tells him, like Eduardo said, I need an aspirin, I need water. Should have done this 2 years ago is something he says. Doesn't mention a heart attack, but as Drew mentions, he gets home and what's he tell his wife? Take me to the hospital. I had a heart attack. This is terrible. I'm in such terrible shape. No, it's go get the car. It's way up in the mountains. See, and Drew's right. She goes up. She has a friend, and the first time the daughter's with him, and Drew's correct. No jumper cables, no gas cans, nothing. So she's probably like either like, what, you didn't tell me that you ran out of gas and you drained the battery.
Wouldn't
So
that be part of the conversation?
You
Like,
would think. You
yeah,
would think.
absolutely. Like if I were to do that, ask my wife to help me, I would tell her like, hey, I drained the
Bring some
battery.
cables.
Yeah. Or can you bring the gas can from the shed or something,
2 gallons.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. And she's got,
No
someone with her
sense.
that could help her. This doesn't make any sense. So
They don't think of it either.
they got to drive back, and up the next day she's got another person with her, and this time
She
they
takes
put
the gas and the cables.
Yeah, she's got gas and jumper cables, and they get the car. How they got it out of there, they don't really explain, but they either filled up the tank and jumped the battery. So, excuse me. Cindy's got something going on, and I like Drew's point that they're not going to the hospital, they're going to the car. It seems like there's a lot of emphasis on getting to the car. Is there something about that car and that location that's problematic, or something in that car that's problematic?
Could have been a
But they
map to
don't-
the trailers. That's just
Exactly.
me speculating. Could have been a map to the trailers, like Eduardo did say. Yes, some connection to the trailers. We don't know that anybody had a connection to the trailers because they were in the middle of nowhere. The trailers were in the middle of nowhere. I mean, the boys finding those trailers by chance, I think, is almost impossible with all the deadfall. But I agree with Eduardo there. Somebody knew the trailers were up there, and it could have been as simple as somebody overhearing a conversation at Mountain House. If Tony was the one that found out for sure that they had gone up on the night before to get the snow off the roof, the Forest Service. But I think that was only one person, which is odd because usually government entities would have 2 people just for safety. A driver and a guy with them to help them get the snow off the roof of the trailer so they didn't collapse. But it's just so ironic that they were going up there to do that the day before the boys show up to those trailers, that they were there the day before. And these trailers are unmanned. I mean, they're just there for forest fires or somebody gone missing in the woods. So they were not regularly occupied. They were just up there in case they needed them in the middle of nowhere. But they were going to get the snow off the roofs the day before one of the most infamous missing person cases. It's the California. Is too convenient for me.
well, I mean, what else would, if we're going to go down that rabbit hole, is there any reason that they would be involved in this as far as workers? Because I haven't really heard that opinion before.
Could have been ransom. I mean, you had Chowchilla. That was a ransom case. I mean, it happened. People got desperate for money.
Okay.
But why the boys?
It could have been held there for ransom. I personally think they were taken to the trailers because they were in the middle of nowhere. They were very hard to find. Just the boys stumbling on that by accident are 1 in a million.
And can you give people perspective of how I know you said it was difficult, but about how far was it from the vehicle to these trailers? And I know this was at night, but do you think that you'd be able to see a path to these trailers, or can you give us some detail with that?
I'll let Tony pick up on here. He knows it well and he's been to the area, but some surmise that they followed the path of the snowcat that had gone up there the night before to get the snow off the trailer roofs. So some surmise that the boys found that path of the snowcat and took it. So the distance from where the car was left at Rogers Cow Camp, as the crow flies, because this road is winding around, going around to Bucks Lake. But as the crow flies, it was 5.7 miles. Like if you went up in the air and went straight to the trailers, about 5.7 miles. But by foot, I think it was closer to maybe 10 or 11 miles if you took the road around, which wound around and then back to the right going towards Bucks Lake. And then you'd have to go back south to get to what they call the Granite Basin, where the trailers actually were. It was called the Granite Basin. Sometimes they call it the Daniel Zink Campground, but it was actually in a place called the Granite Basin. I think that was an error in reporting, but that's interesting to know because the reports that came out early, I think we're all saying 12 miles, but it was really kind of misleading. But Tony knows the area.
Yeah, they said it wasn't a full moon, but they said it was a moon where you would have enough reflection off the snow to have a decent sight out there in the snow. And where they abandoned the car would have been near the road you could take these old logging roads that would sort of, in switchbacks, as Drew talked about, that would get them to the area where the trailers were located. Now, if they follow the tracks, is that definitely a way to get up there? Absolutely. Now, can they drive up that way in their car? No, because the road was chained off according to the Forestry Service, and the snow was incredibly deep that year. It was a bad year for snow. So if a snowcat did get through, people, theorized that a snowcat took the guys up. Okay, who's got a snowcat, and why would you, if you're willing to do all that work to put 5 guys on a snowcat and take them up there, like at the end of The Shining, what's your plan, and,
Right.
and why do you do it? So it shows that there was a plan to this, and walking, and what we see with the remains of the men, they're not all found in one place. So especially with Madruga and Sterling, their locations, it shows that I think a walk is definitely possible. And Ted's found in the trailer. Gary's shoes are in the trailer. There's a busted window. Jackie's location outside the trailer, about a mile. So we're seeing something happening up in that area. Now, could they have, like we keep going back to, could they have seen the tracks that night? In Joe's story, he did say whatever type of moon was out, it did reflect off the snow enough. And being a Midwesterner, there's times, I've got my dog outside late at night, and I don't need to turn the light on because I can see him outside because of the moon reflecting off the snow. And it gives you a decent view. Could the men have found the tracks and just started following? Now, they asked Jack Madruga's family, did he have a flashlight in the car? And his mom said, I don't think he did. Now, could he have had a flashlight in the car and got it out? Yeah, it's possible, but no flashlight was found around Jack Madruga's remains or Bill Sterling's remains or Jackie's remains. There wasn't a flashlight in the trailer. Does that mean like Gary could have had a flashlight and taken it with him? It's possible. But again, we can only speculate. And I mean, I'm just thinking this right now. Could Joe Shones have had a decent interaction with him, giving them a flashlight? Guys, go get me help, get me out of here, help me, and send them on their way. It's all these theories we get to when we talk about the case. Like, oh, it's possible this happened, it's possible that happened.
Something happened at Rogers, though. We can agree on that. Something quickly happened at Rogers because we know. I think I'm safe in saying it's a fact that Doc's window was rolled down. And he would have never, as we all know, he would have never, ever, ever left that car with the window down. That was his baby. He was OCD about that car, the way he drove it. He would have never exited his vehicle with his window down. Although we know they found his keys with his remains.
Yeah, so there's a reason to get out of that car quickly and not stay in a car.
Something happened fast.
Yeah, with it, they had enough gas just to turn on the car for a little bit to stay warm, turn it off, and then with 5 people in the car, there should be enough body warmth within the car to kind of keep that okay for a little while and maybe wait it out till morning. Or maybe there could have been a fear that, they're missing the basketball tournament. Who knows? But there's something going down at Rogers Cow Camp where everything falls apart quickly.
Happened fast. Yeah, the window is the key.
Yeah, someone had to have walked up to that window. Something was said.
Scared them.
And whatever was said, they fled a perfectly good car. And
they went uphill. And I know there's been many studies on people getting lost. They say when you're lost, you tend to walk back downhill, not uphill. And I don't know how that would have applied to the boys, but they definitely went uphill in the Meninza. I don't know how you say it, Tony would know, the Meninza bush that was in the Plumas.
Manzanita.
I mean, Manzanita bush. They said this stuff is like, is it thorny, Tony? I mean, I heard this stuff is like, you don't want to go near it. Like it's like a thorn patch type vegetation.
I'm not sure about thorn, but you're right. It is thick and it might have thorns, but it's something where it's like, man, you just don't want to get it. It's just something you just don't want to deal with.
Nasty stuff. It was everywhere.
Yeah. And there's also old mine shafts up there because it's a national forest and not a national park. And a national forest, you can log, you can mine, you can hunt, you can have all these sort of recreational activities up there, from like snowmobiling to skiing to whatever. So it's pretty easy to have all this stuff going on. And someone said, hey, if there's an old mine shaft up in the Plumas, and there were some up that way, some people did have, sites where they, had land claims. And if there's an old mine shaft that wasn't properly closed and it had rotted out or whatever, and Gary makes a wrong move, falls into that, you're never going to know it.
Right.
And that's a definite possibility. And Jack Beecham, who's the undersheriff, felt that Gary did fall into Manzanita bush, which he said would be super difficult to get through and look for remains. And, animals scattering remains like it did with 3 of the victims, making their autopsies extremely difficult. That's another issue too. And Drew had brought up the glasses that Gary was wearing. Gary's stepdad said, if you find the glasses, you'll find Gary's remains, because what do you say? Bears do not eat glasses.
Eat glasses, yeah. And he had those thick Coke, they called Coke bottle rims, because they were reminiscent of the glass Coke bottles that had those thick bottoms. So they called them Coke bottle glasses because his vision was so bad.
Yeah.
Well, sorry to interrupt you, but I wanted to make sure I get everyone's thoughts. We've got about 10 minutes left. Eduardo, can you walk us through in a few minutes of what do you believe happened from the time they got their car essentially stuck until, or why would they have left their car, I guess, is the overwhelming question. Do you have any theories of that and anything that would support your theory?
I've been working on a theory of my own, which shall remain undisclosed until I have some kind of evidence to prove what I'm saying, because, talking is so cheap, especially these days.
And that's completely fair. Right.
Yeah. And I'm 100% want to be wrong about it, because it will be no good, because we have, I believe, to put it briefly, like 5 big mysteries. First off is the mystery of what the boys are doing up there to begin with. Why on earth will they drive there? I don't see no reason at all to be there in the first place, besides meeting Jones or meeting whoever, or for whatever reason abandoning a fully functioning car. I don't know.
With gas.
The second mystery is how on earth the boys found the trailers. Well, maybe due to Tony great works, we can believe that for maybe a coincidence, the Forest Service plowed the old Quincy Oroville highway to the trailers, and the boys followed that path, and that's how they found the trailers. Of course, another mystery is why Joe Jones up there to begin with. He has no legitimate business to be up there at that time of the day, at that time of the year. Absolutely.
Yeah, and he said he had a place up there. Remember, one of his stories was that he had a cabin up there that high up,
which is not
near
true.
Rogers, which is not true. We know for a fact he never owned property that high up.
So what is he doing up there? We don't know. Then we have a fourth mystery, the trailer scene, which I could talk, for another full hour, because that's my main focus. And
I agree. Trailers are the way to go.
The trailers is, I'm realizing now that I have never talked about this in public, but I was 24 years old when one of my best friends, Maria Florencia Penacci, went missing. To this very day, we are still looking for her. Yet another case of missing persons that struck me personally, and we spent, as you can imagine, weeks and months, organizing ourselves among friends and doing search parties and following any possible lead that we heard, even doing some grid search, like unnecessary, but we don't know because we are civilians, we do other stuff. But I also got to spend some time with the police. They let me flew around the office for a couple of days, and Then I asked them these very same questions, what we civilians may learn from you professionals. How do you know how to pay attention to one thing and not to the other? What works, what doesn't, that kind of stuff. And I went for a coffee with this mid-high ranking officer for the Federal Police, Argentina, Federal Police, Daniel Omar Fernandez. And I'm never going to forget, he told me in a very strong Buenos Aires accent, like this, what you need to do is build yourself a space-time map, not only a chronology, but also in space. So you can answer to the best of your abilities who's doing what, when, and where, And here's the trick, he told me. When you do this, you are going to notice that there is a part of the story that, even for no reason, pops up. It smells funny, it makes no sense, or you don't even know why, maybe by instinct, but you say something. Well, the day I applied that tool that Fernandez gave me in this case, it was immediately, as he said, the trailer scene. There is something about that scene that I don't know. There are just too many mysteries, as you Americans says. The situation has so many ifs, ands, and buts.
Right.
That I just can put my finger around it, and that's why I've been focusing on that particular scene. So many mysteries.
Well, and to your point that you brought up when the show started is that there's very little known solid facts about this case, which is so hard.
We do have some,
and there's
some material to work on.
There's what?
Cameron. We do know some facts from the trailer scenes, which is what was found,
right?
What was not found, and what we do know. Some 31 cases of sea rations were missing. 3 cartons. The Forest Service says 3 cartons of sea rations are missing. I did my research.
Very low amount.
Every carton of sea rations had a 73 model, had 11 cans. So 11 times 3, 33 cans. Police said 31 cans were recovered. Okay. We have an unclaimed wristwatch from nobody's, aligned with the other Ted Weher's belongings.
Ring.
We have a broken, the north window from the bunker trailers was found broken. We are assuming that the boys broke into federal property through that window, and we have no known evidence of the boys trying to fix that window for 2 months. I don't know. We have no indications of a regular water supply, and believe me, as a man who knows a little bit about snow, melting snow is not a way to get hydrated.
No,
not at all.
It kill you.
It consumes a lot of energy. Snow is basically air trapped between water crystals. So when you melt the snow from yay long of snow, you get like this water, and it takes a lot of energy, a lot of fuel and your belly goes inflated because it's mostly air. If you eat snow and you burn your lips around here, you get purple. No. So, you gentlemen, please tell me how Mr. Theodore L. Weher survived, as he actually did,
long time,
whatever the internet says,
10 weeks,
for a period of 2 months.
10 weeks, yeah.
Being conservative, 2 months. At this scene, in which conditions
someone took care of him.
Found. We have always assumed that someone took care of him. We have always assumed that it was Gary, since Gary's shoes were found inside the trailer. Gary's old canvas Converse shoes. Absolutely prepared for the outdoors, like everyone knows now. And but we don't know anything else. And I'm wondering for a long time now, what if we have misunderstood? What if I have misunderstood a part of this segment of the story?
Well, I will look forward to you sharing those details with me when you do decide to discuss it publicly. I hope you'll come back on. We've been going at this for about an hour and 10 minutes. So I wanted to go ahead and wrap it up and give everyone time to, if you got something to promote. So Drew, can you tell us about your book and where we can find it?
Yeah, it's called Out of Bounds. It's on Amazon, and you'll see it there, as well as Tony's book. I think they go well together. My book has a lot of narratives in it that co-writer did that are really great, kind of put you in that 1978 mode and kind of takes you through the emotions of like what happened when Doc Madruga passes away, and they come to the house, and she's like, "Can I see what's left of my son?" And they tell her, "There's nothing left, ma'am. There's nothing left of your son other than some bones that have been, scattered by animals." One of his arms was far away. Very just horrific what happened. Jackie Hewitt's father goes up there and picks up his jacket, and the tailbone falls out. I mean, some of this stuff is definitely true. It's very hard on these families and all the tragedies that happen to these families, like Eduardo talked about. And getting to know the families, you find out other things that happened to these same families other than this incident to their other siblings, like Rick Madruga, who recently passed away, who was a quadriplegic from a car wreck, I think in 1980, where he got hit by a U-Haul. That was Doc's nephew. I mean, just horrible things like that that have happened in these families outside of this tragedy. It's just, what they've been through is unbelievable. So all we want is answers. There's no contest about who's right or wrong. Real quickly, there's one big theory in this case. It's called the town bully theory. It's one of the more pervasive ones here. I'm not a big proponent of that one for a lot of reasons. That's the one, of course, where Gary was thrown over the bridge. But the biggest thing against that, of course, as Eduardo mentioned, they found Gary's shoes in the trailer. So if Gary's shoes were in the trailer, how did they get there if he was thrown over the bridge, right? And that theory also would have to take into account that they left 4 living witnesses, and one of the henchmen's bullies ran them up into the Plumas. That's pretty far-fetched. So I'm not a fan of that. But I will say this: that story has legs in Yuba City, and one of the families believes it is gospel. And I'm not going to tell one of the families what to believe, but that story really has just been told so many times over the years that it's believed by many. And I'm not a fan of that story. The person involved in this story is certainly capable of doing that. But why did he leave 4 living witnesses, and how were Gary's shoes found in the trailer? Another thing, going back to the trailers really quick, I'm trying to wrap it up. I don't know how much time, but as Eduardo mentioned, not many of the sea rations were consumed that were in the adjacent trailer. There's 2 trailers joined by a common deck. One person mentioned one time, I think it was on my show, that if Gary Mathias was there, and I believe he was there, far more of those rations would have been eaten, because the other 4 boys would have looked at it as stealing. Gary Mathias would not. But if Gary was there himself and made it, let's say he was taking care of Ted Weir for 8 to 10 weeks, and they know that by his beard growth, as Eduardo was referring to how long that Ted survived in that trailer. Far more of those rations would have been eaten if Gary Mathias was in the trailers that long. So it's my belief that Gary was there, but he went out to seek help very early on, maybe taking Ted's larger shoes. So if Gary's there, he leaves early. So you know where I'm kind of going if you listen to everything I've said, but I'm not a proponent of the town bully theory. I'm also not a big proponent of the coach being involved. I interviewed the coach. Tony gave me some information. I was able to find the boys basketball coach, interviewed him. It was very odd because he didn't show up to take them to the game the next morning. And he said it's because one of the parents called him looking for the boys, so he knew the boys wouldn't be there. That was his excuse. He's a bit of a weird guy, but I believe him. I don't think he had anything to do with it, but it's a good theory that kind of gained weight for a while. And I interviewed the guy and don't think he had any reason to do it. So I think you can take the coach theory off the table, and I think people should take the town bully theory off the table, but I understand why they don't.
Well, Drew, we'll have you back on, and we can discuss those series in detail, as well as Eduardo. Tony, if you can, do you want to give us a quick plug about your book and where we can find it?
Sure. Things Aren't Right. The Disappearance of the Yuba County Five is at Amazon. Drew has a copy of that. If you are at Amazon, you know what you should do is you should get Drew's book, Out of Bounds, What Happened to the Yuba County Five, but also add in Paratrooper of Fortune, his DB Cooper book, which is really, really good. Tony. And he makes a great case for a really interesting suspect. And then you have your other book. Is it Sighting In on the Zodiac Killer? That's the title. So you have 4 books you need to get.
Right. So, and you have a new book too, Tony. You're
yeah, I'm working on a book about a murder that happened in Dayton, Ohio. It's a town where I used to work, and I used to.
About your comic, but I didn't know that. That's great.
Yep, you're working on a comic book.
I knew about the comic. I was about to say.
Yeah, there's a comic book. It's called Day 165. It's over at Kickstarter. If you like the Twilight Zone and war stories, it's sort of a blend of the two, and that's running through Kickstarter right now through crowdfunding. It will be published by SourcePoint Press. But yeah, I mean, we're pretty busy here talking about Yuba County 5. I know Seth's podcast is going to have some of us on talking about the case. I'm talking to some Scottish podcasters on Friday. They have some interest in the case. They reached out to me, and I know, as always, I've got a group chat with Drew and Eduardo and a few other people who are big into the case and have done their homework and do amazing work. Just great stuff. And that's what we do, in our group chat, is just bring up our ideas. And that's what I like about it. Everyone has their theories and everyone's cool with everyone's theories. And
yeah, nothing shot down.
It's like, hey, you got a theory, run with it. And
more the merrier. And for people listening to this, we're open to anybody's theories. I mean, I could change my mind in a minute about something, that's the way I lean, but
absolutely,
I could change my mind. I mean, it's like,
yeah.
None of us are
finding something new
in the business
to change your
of
mind.
Being right. I mean,
yeah,
Johnny's
we just
right,
want the answers for the family.
But jokes aside, we are not in the business of being right. We're in the business of trying to, make
find the answers.
Sense.
Yeah,
make common sense.
Finding the answers.
And that's what I appreciate about this case is you've got this community that they keep an open mind, and everyone's been very respectful about their own opinions. And I love the insight that has been provided throughout. I believe we've done 4 shows on this, but every time I get new comments about people that lived in that area and can provide that perspective, or that looks at it
looking for those people,
which I can absolutely appreciate that. So, if you're watching this, please leave us a comment. Tell us what you think about this case. And if you have questions about it, I promise you we will be doing this show again, because I can't wait to have these guys back on. While you're buying books on Amazon, why don't you add this one to your list? A Murder on Campus, A Professor of the Cop in North Carolina's Most Notorious Cold Case.
I'm going to check that out for sure.
With my brother, Dr. Brian Santana. That is a cold case in 1973 about the only murder that occurred on UNC Asheville's campus of Virginia Olson. Make sure you check that out. It's also available on Kindle, Audible, Barnes & Noble, anywhere where you can buy a book. If you'd like to support the show, you can do that by liking and subscribing to Santana True Crime. I'd appreciate that. You can also find me on Instagram at Santana True Crime. If you've got a case that you would like me to cover, please reach out. I try to do as many of them as I can. Gentlemen, I promised you that I'd keep you on a time frame because I know that you've got other things in your life. I can't thank you enough for coming on. We'll do this again. I promise.
Oh, yeah.
Guys, thank you again, and good night.
Thanks. Well, hey, one quick plug. I got a podcast coming out in 2 days. It's youshouldnotknowthis.org. It's fascinating. 2 days it comes out, a big podcast. I had to plug it because my friend's kind of running it. So didn't want to miss that opportunity.
All right, make sure y'all check that out. All right, thanks again.
Thanks, guys.